Type a question into a box. Anything. How long do whales live? Explain a joke. Write me a poem about rain. Now watch your thumb. It presses one key. Enter, and the question is gone. It felt like nothing. It weighed nothing. It left no mark on the world. That's the deal we've all agreed to believe, that what we do on a screen is weightless, free, clean, that it happens nowhere, in a place we've even named for its weightlessness. We call it the cloud. And for your whole life, that belief has been safe, because whatever your question did next, it did it out of sight, and it did it small. But your question didn't go nowhere. The instant you pressed enter, it went somewhere. Somewhere real, with an address, a temperature, and a cost. It didn't vanish. It left the glass, and it started to move. Follow it. Just this once, don't let it out of your sight. Because if you follow one weightless question all the way down, past the glass, past the wall, past the edge of everything you were ever shown, you find something enormous waiting at the bottom, something that has been there the entire time. Let's go find it. We say we send a message as if it floats off like a thought. It doesn't. There is no floating anywhere in this story. To send is to move a physical thing through a physical place. And your question is about to cross a landscape. It leaves your device as a pulse of light in a glass thread or radio in the air, and it arrives, in a blink, at a box in your home you stopped noticing years ago. The router, its first machine. It's warm. Feel the top of it sometime. That warmth is your question, and everyone's passing through. From there it drops into a cable. And here's the first thing they never tell you. The cable is buried in the ground. Your weightless message is now a pulse of light racing through a glass fibre the width of a hair, under streets, under fields, at 2/3 the speed of light, but through dirt. It hops from machine to machine, each one humming, each one warm, until it reaches a building. And you have seen this building. You've driven past it and called it a warehouse. No windows, no sign. A low grey box in a field where land is cheap, humming behind a fence. You never gave it a name because it was built not to be given one. Your question is racing toward that building at almost the speed of light. Let's beat it there and be inside when it arrives. Inside the grey building, your question finally reaches the thing that will answer it. Not a mind, a chip. A sliver of silicon smaller than your thumbnail, printed with billions of switches. And here is where the weightless finally shows its weight, where you can for the first time feel it. Because thinking for a machine is not some airy process. To think is to flip switches. Billions of them, billions of times a second, and every single flip takes a push of electricity, and every push leaves a trace of heat. That's not a flaw, that's physics. There is no switch you can flip anywhere in the universe for free. Every calculation ends as warmth. So your one small question lands on this chip, and the chip flips the switches it takes to answer you, and the chip gets hot. Too hot to touch. Hot enough that, left alone, it would cook itself in seconds. Look what just happened. You typed a sentence that weighed nothing, and at the end of a wire a piece of the physical world got warmer. You did that. The poem about rain is being paid for in heat. And here's the thing about heat. It cannot be wished away. It has to go somewhere, which would be no problem at all if yours were the only question. It isn't. Pull back from your one warm chip. Beside it is another, and another. They're bolted into a rack the size of a refrigerator, dozens of chips, all flipping, all hot. Pull back again. The rack stands in a row of racks. Pull back again, and the row becomes an aisle, and the aisle becomes a hall. Thousands of chips, tens of thousands, stretching into the dark, every one of them answering someone's weightless question, every one of them shedding heat into the same room. And the room roars. That sound is not machinery grinding. It is wind, enormous fans, walls of them doing one desperate job, pushing the heat away before the whole hall cooks itself. A room like this can turn more electricity into heat than a small town uses to live. Stand in the middle of it. Every degree of that warmth on your face was, a moment ago, a question. A billion questions a day arriving as weightless thoughts and leaving as heat you could dry your clothes in. The fans buy a few seconds, they move the heat off the chips and into the air of the hall, but now the hall is hot and the heat is still here, still real, still climbing. Air alone can't carry away this much. To move heat this big, you need something heavier than wind. You need water. So they bring in water, rivers of it, pipes as thick as your body run through the building, and through them moves a current of water, whose only purpose is to touch the heat of your questions and carry it away. The water goes in cool. It comes out warm, warm with the day's thinking, warm with a million answers, and then it has to give that heat up to the sky. And the way it does that is the oldest trick there is. It evaporates. The warm water is sprayed through towers, and some of it lifts off as vapour and rises, carrying the heat up and out into the clouds. Watch what you're seeing. Your question became heat. The heat became warm water. The warm water became a rising plume of steam, drifting off over the fields. A single one of these buildings can breathe hundreds of thousands of gallons of water into the sky every day. Water pulled from a river, a lake, an aquifer. The same water a town drinks, lifted into the air and carried off as cloud. The prompt you typed is now, physically, a little bit of weather, and it has to be replaced. Tomorrow the machine is thirsty again. It always is. So the building sits where the water is beside the river on top of the aquifer and drinks. It's the strangest thing. A machine that only thinks, and it needs to drink a river to do it. But the water is only half of what it needs. Because to make all that heat in the first place, the machine has to be fed constantly, enormously, with power. And that power has to come from somewhere. So let's do the last thing. Let's turn around and follow the wire out. Trace the cable that feeds the building, and it thickens. It leaves the hall as a heavy line and runs to a yard beside the building you never looked at twice, full of grey, humming towers wrapped in wire and oil. These are transformers, and here you learn the second secret of this whole machine. We think the hard part is making electricity. It isn't. The hard part is delivering it, getting enough of it, to one exact spot, all at once. And that turns out to be brutally physical. A transformer big enough to feed a building like this is a hand-built object the size of a house, made of tons of copper and steel, and there are only a handful of factories on Earth that can build one. Order it today, and it may arrive in 3 years or 5. Keep tracing the wire outward. The transformers feed a substation, the substation feeds a transmission line, those steel towers marching across the countryside that you've looked past your entire life. And now that line is carrying an unimaginable amount of power toward one grey building in a field, so much that in region after region, the wires that were built for a whole territory are running out of room. There is a line to get onto the grid now, and in some places that line is 10 years long. The most advanced thing we have ever built is being throttled by the most physical things imaginable: copper, steel, and a wire with no more space on it. Follow the wire to its end, though, and it doesn't stop at a wall. It stops at a fire. At the far end of the wire, something is being burned or split or spun to make the power your question ate. A river turning a turbine, gas feeding a flame, a nuclear core that a few years ago was switched off as finished and is now being switched back on just to feed machines like this one. But here is the part that finally reaches you. All of it. The burning, the wire, the transformers, the building, the river, none of it has its own private world. It draws from the same grid your house does, the same pool of power that runs your lights and boils your kettle. It is one shared reservoir, and there is now an enormous new mouth at its edge, drinking constantly and never sleeping. When a mouth that large drinks from a shared pool, the level moves for everyone, not in a way you can see, in a way you can only pay. In quiet auctions and rate cases with names no one is meant to read, the price of keeping the whole pool full is rising, and it is landing on the electricity bill of towns that will never host one of these buildings for a thought they never asked to think. So stand back now, further than you've stood yet. You started at a pane of glass with a weightless question, and the question led to a chip, and the chip to a hall, and the hall to a river, and the river to a wire, and the wire to a fire, and the fire to the grid, to the same wire that boils your tea. You were never outside this. You were standing inside it the whole time. And it's time, finally, to say what it is. Watch it all at once, the glass, the buried light, the grey building, the hot chip, the roaring hall, the river breathed into the sky, the transformer, the tower line, the far-off fire, the grid, your own kitchen, one continuous machine, and your question running through all of it in a single unbroken breath, and an answer appearing on your screen as if it had cost nothing at all. It didn't cost nothing. It never did. Here is the thing we could not see, because it was always too small to feel. Every digital act you have ever done had a body. Every search, every message, every song, every scroll, each one moved through metal, drew power, and left heat. There was never a weightless world. There was only a world whose weight we hadn't been made to carry yet. And the reason we can finally see it, the reason this is the year the invisible became impossible to ignore, is that we built something that thinks so much and so hungrily that the body of the digital world grew large enough to break the surface. It grew a plume of steam you can watch from the road. It grew a line on your bill. AI didn't create this machine. AI turned on the light in a room that was always there, and when you see the room, you see something older than any company, older than the internet, older than electricity itself. Once we learned to burn wood, and it remade what we could become. Then we learned to burn fuel, then to move electrons, and each time the fire reshaped the world around its warmth. Where we lived, what we built, which rivers we bent. This is the newest fire. We have learned to burn power into thought, and like every fire before it, it is quietly rearranging the physical world around the place where it burns. So the next time you type a question and it feels like nothing, remember that you just reached into that fire. Somewhere a chip got warm, a river gave up a breath of water to the sky, and a wire pulled a little harder on a pool you share with your whole town. None of it weightless, none of it nowhere, all of it real. The cloud was never a place above us. It was a machine beneath us the whole time. And once you can feel the weight of a single weightless thing, you're seeing the big picture.